Welcome to the Horror Interview Show. I'm Skullface. Today I'm interviewing Jim Towns about directing and writing End Times. What inspired you to create End Times?
Well, I'm from Pittsburgh originally, so I grew up knowing about Night of the Living Dead, the George Romero film from the 60s, and it was kind of an important cultural touchstone for anybody who was interested in horror in Pittsburgh at that in the time. So in a way, it's something I thought I maybe would never want to do because you don't want to go too close to home, kind of. At the same time, there's that temptation to take your stab at it and trying to put your own mark on it. And that's what I ended up deciding to do, was to try to do a zombie film my way and try to figure out what that way was. And that way ended up being telling a kind of a small personal story within this larger landscape of a horror film.
What were the main challenges of creating such a movie?
We had a limited budget, so really the main challenge is to tell a story about a wasteland while filming it completely within the city of Los Angeles, which is one of the most populous cities in the country. It was important for us to find these locations, and we shot in probably 30 to 45 different locations around the whole LA area, from up in Simi Valley um, to Laurel Canyon to all the way down in Orange County in the south. We just had to find the right locations that could look like it was the end of the world, while we would still have access to things like modern conveniences like bathrooms and restaurants and food and anything that we needed to go and get. But for the most part, the real challenge was filming in these locations where there were no bathrooms, and we had to bring everything in, all the water we had to drink for the cast and crew and everything like that. And it was a very hot summer in LA the year we filmed this, so that was probably the biggest challenge.
Do you like directing and what do you like about it?
Um, I came up being a visual artist. I studied illustration at Savannah College of Art and Design in Georgia. Um, but I also started writing, and I started enjoying that. I think directing, I get to do it all. I get to uh, have a visual element in that. I do a lot of my own storyboards for as preparatory for filming. I get to write. I get to help consult on like costumes, art direction, visual effects after the fact, editing. So it's every different type of storytelling. It's verbal and it's visual, that I get to have my hand in. So I guess I'm a bit of a polyglot, so uh, I like to get to do all those different things, and I get to do that when I direct a movie.
Were any scenes difficult to film?
A couple. There's a scene where Jamie Bernadette's character gets assaulted by a group of people, and that's a type of scene that if you're going to put it in your film, you want to treat it with its due respect. You want to make sure that all of your actors feel safe, and everyone is on the same page of how you do it, and you want to film it in a way that represents both the horrific element of it adequately. You don't want to minimize something like that. At the same time, you don't want to be exploitative about the way you film it. So it's a kind of a thing. It's almost like filming a stunt scene or a fight scene, really, where the way you film the movie stops, and then you have to adjust and do this one scene a very different way. Just again, in the interest of making sure everybody is safe and everyone feels comfortable, and is able to go to the places they have to go to tell this kind of story. That was a really complicated scene. A lot of the zombie scenes were very, very complicated as well, because it involves a lot of people in makeup. And even if you have 2 or 3 makeup artists going, you still have 20 characters, 20 actors coming in to get zombified makeup. They go through a process, and the problem is by the time each makeup artist is doing 3 or 4 or 5 actors, by the time they're on the 5th actor, the makeup on the first actor has started to melt off because they've already been made up now for 2 hours, and they have to go back and touch it up. So it gets very, very complicated to make sure you get everything looking right on the day in the camera.
Do you have a favorite moment from the movie?
Um, I like a lot of the moments in the movie. I like this first shot that my visual effects artist Damon Shelton did. It's a shot that was the plate of this downtown Los Angeles was shot by Ray Carwell, our DP, and then Damon went in and did all the burning buildings and all the post apocalyptic kind of effects. That shot was almost supposed to be later in the film. In the original version, and we moved it to the front and just set off the movie with that. And I think it's great just because it gives you it plops you right in this world. And I think everyone's seen enough movies like this that they understand what that is, and you can go from there. My other favorite is probably the last 10 minutes of the film. I think the action and adventure of the movie kind of stops, and we finally put a button on this the story between these two characters we've been following now for an hour and 15 minutes, and figure out how they say goodbye to each other finally. I think that's some of the best writing I've done, and I think it's some of the best directing I've done.
What would you say are the main challenges of writing a horror movie?
Excuse me. I think the main challenge, and I think it's a thing that a lot of young filmmakers struggle with, is to make all your characters interesting and likable. I don't think an audience is going to invest in the story of your horror movie unless they want to see your heroes survive and thrive and get away. I think too many films have unlikable character, and not every character has to be perfect. Good characters, great characters all have flaws, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, I think you really have to find a way to make the audience root for your protagonists, or else they're just not going to be invested in the outcome of the movie, and they're just sort of watching people get killed one by one, which it's fine. But I think that's the biggest challenge is really defining a hero in your film.
Who are your favorite horror writers and directors?
I'm a classicist. I go back. I like Bram Stoker and Mary Shelley. I grew up reading Dracula and Frankenstein. Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, of course. Going on, for film, obviously Romero was a big influence of mine. John Carpenter. Growing up, I was growing up right as he was making all his great films, from Halloween to The Thing, Escape from New York, and all that stuff. As I got into filmmaking, Guillermo del Toro was doing a lot of his earlier works like Devil's Backbone, and I imprinted, I think, a lot on those films. Some of my earlier features are a lot more, not more arty. They leaned heavier into artiness, I guess I should say. I think I'm technically better now, but I really liked what he was doing. He was really combining horror with a very high-end aesthetic. A very beautiful picture. He was making beautiful looking movies that happened to be horror movies, and that was a big deal for me early on when I decided, like, this is kind of the thing I want to do. And I'm very proud that I don't think I've ever made an ugly film. I think all my films, despite the content, are all very pretty pictures.
Where can people watch End Times?
It is available on VOD everywhere right now, including iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, all sorts of places. If you wherever you go get your VOD right now, it's there. I think pretty soon it's going to be available on some streaming platforms, and hopefully we're going to have a home video physical media release at some point down the road. We're talking currently with the Asylum on that.
Where can people follow you?
I am on all the social medias: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just look up Jim Towns, JimTowns. I have a very simple, very boring name that somehow people still have difficulty with. I don't know why, but that's okay. Just find me there. I'm around. I regularly post about what I do for a living. I'm also a novelist. I write horror fiction quite a bit, and some other types of fiction, non-stuff. So, I will keep you updated with what's going on with my shenanigans there. I hope to see you there.
I would like to thank Jim for the interview. People watching can like, comment, share, subscribe, and whatever else people do to videos if you're watching in the future.